NTV, turning on your world.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to AM Live. My name is Olive Burrows, and this morning we're looking at mentoring the next generation of women leaders. You do remember that Thursday is the day we customarily host in an all-female panel. Now, for the first time in 10 months, Kenya's inflation has declined, a pointer to the commencement of a decline in the cost of living after a daunting year of unrelenting escalation in costs. According to data from the National Bureau of Statistics, November's inflation closed at 9.5%, marginally lower than 9.6% reported for October. Cooking oil reported the largest month-on-month decline at 6% lower than October 2022. The housing, water, electricity, gas and other fuels index decreased by a marginal 0.4% between October and November. The Ministry of Health is reporting that 25 people have died from an ongoing cholera outbreak, with over 1,000 cases having been reported in 10 counties across the country. And as Ruth Sarmwe reports, health officials are calling for caution among the residents of Nairobi, Machakos and Garissa counties, which have recorded the highest number of infections.
Basic hygiene and hand washing services.
Speaking during the launch of Kenya's status report on infection prevention and control in healthcare facilities, Acting Director General of Health Services Dr. Patrick Amoth indicated that Nairobi leads in the number of infections.
The three counties with the highest burden of the disease is Nairobi County, where all the 17 sub-counties have been affected, Garissa sub-county and Machakos County.
And within the 10 counties that have reported the disease, more than 1,000 infections have been recorded in different health facilities across the country.
In total, we have had a total of 1,094 cases with 25 fatalities.
And while the government is working to combat the spread of the disease, healthcare officials have been called upon to strictly implement infection control measures.
Studies have shown that close to 80–90% of healthcare workers don't actually practice infection prevention control measures. So one of our challenges as healthcare workers is to be able to change that practice.
Meanwhile, in Garissa County, the rapid spread of this disease has seen the death of 4 people, with 372 others recuperating after they were infected following an outbreak at the Dadaab refugee camp in October.
Most of the cases now, majority of these cases, I think almost over 90% of these cases are still within the refugee camps. But then the cases now have also spilled over to the host community. So we are having several of our sub-counties now that have been affected.
During an emergency meeting with government and non-governmental organizations, Garissa's county health minister called on the residents to observe hygiene and seek medical help when they are unwell.
Call upon to the people of Garissa to scale up their hygiene and help us in disrupting and containing this disease. It is through a joint effort that we can actually contain.
Symptoms of the disease include severe diarrhea, which causes dehydration, vomiting, body weakness, and low blood pressure. Delayed treatment of this disease may cause death. On Tuesday, following a meeting between President William Ruto and the cabinet, the ministers approved for vaccination of 2 million people in Nairobi, Machakos, and Garissa counties to contain the spread of the disease. Ruth Sarmwe, NTV.
The murder charges against Public Service and Gender Cabinet Secretary Aisha Jumwa and Tob Cohen's widow, Sarah Cohen, will no longer proceed after the Director of Public Prosecutions dropped their matters. The DPP says that there is lack of evidence to allow for prosecution, therefore quashing the cases. Kevin Mutai reports on these high-profile cases that have the accused crying freedom at last.
The Director of Public Prosecution has withdrawn murder charges against Tom Cohen's widow, Sarah Wairimu. State Counsel Wangui Gishuhi told the court that they seek not to proceed with the matter on grounds that there is lack of sufficient evidence. Justice Daniel Ogembo had that the case will, however, proceed as an inquest, inviting all parties to testify before the court. Wairimu was charged in 2019 after the body of Cohen was discovered inside a septic tank in his home. Elsewhere, murder charges against Public Service and Gender Cabinet Secretary Aisha Jumwa has also been dropped by the DPP. The prosecutor told Justice Anne Ongijo that the DPP has decided to turn CS Jumwa into a state witness. The court also ruled that the CS must appear before the court in person on the 21st of December 2022, when fresh charges will be presented. The matter will proceed, leaving her bodyguard Geoffrey Okuto as the main suspect.
The police took magazines and picked 5 guns for analysis. When we looked at the ballistic report, there was no indication that Aisha Jumwa had a gun.
DPP has in one resolve entered a nolle prosequi, which is an indication that the case, the murder charge, as against His Excellency the Cabinet Secretary Aisha Jumwa, has been terminated.
The state has also launched a bid to extradite former Finance Minister Chris Okemo to the United Kingdom to face charges over the alleged theft of 1.5 billion shillings. The court ruled that the DPP had failed to convince the court on why Okemo should be taken to the island of Jersey for trial. Justice Roslyn Oganyo stated that the witnesses failed to testify before the court, therefore failing to persuade her on why she should allow the extradition process. Okemo was on the Royal Court of Jersey list of wanted individuals in the UK, alongside former managing director of the Kenya Power and Lightning Company, Samuel Gishuru, over charges of accepting bribes from foreign organizations. At least for all the accused, it is freedom at last.
We are also filing a petition shortly, calling upon the DPP to review the decision to charge one Ahmed Rashid.
Kevin Mutai, NTV.
The Council of Governors is calling for an immediate halt to the renewal of the contracts under the Managed Equipment Services, MES. According to the governors, counties have had to suffer the burden of paying for these services. A report tabled at the Senate last September said the process of attaining the objectives of MES was bungled, leaving counties bleeding as they pay back the grants. The Council of Governors, through then Health Committee Chair Anyang' Nyong'o, had recommended, in conjunction with the Ministry of Health, the appointment of a multidisciplinary negotiating team that will determine a 3-year contract extension of the services. The 63 billion shilling Managed Equipment Services project was aimed at equipping health facilities with modern and specialized diagnostic equipment. Current chair of the Council of Governors Health Committee, Mudomi Njuki, called for new terms for renewal, a matter that Health Cabinet Secretary Susan Nakumicha expressed support for.
On the issue of managed equipment services, which is popularly known as the MES, which has been a very messy affair for both the counties and sometimes the national government, that there is a need to review the continuous set by the COG before the renewal of the contracts and address Article 187 requirements for intergovernmental agreements.
We have discussed and agreed that it's no longer going to be a mess, but it's going to do the work that it was supposed to do, and that is to offer services to Kenyans. I want to confirm to the patients that there is not going to be any lapse in service delivery as we negotiate this new contract.
Lawyers representing Eastleigh-based crime buster police officer Ahmed Rashid filed a petition seeking to stop Rashid from taking plea over murder charges on the 8th of December. The lawyers want the court to issue conservatory orders against any criminal proceedings by the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Through his lawyers, Rashid wants the Director of Public Prosecutions to review the decision to charge him for the murder of 2 persons allegedly caught on tape. Today, a group of youth, Muslim religious leaders, yesterday, a group of youth, Muslim religious leaders and members of the Eastleigh business community camped outside Milimani Court to show their solidarity with Rashid, saying his work improved the security situation in Eastleigh. However, human rights organizations want Rashid to be held accountable for his actions.
This was not something that was captured at the scene that Ahmed Rashid was there. It is a tape, it's a video, it's a clip that has been uploaded on where? Social media. Then you're told that now that has been recorded, it is evidence. How can that be evidence? We know what the Evidence Act says. If you're going to use a clip that was recorded, you must then authenticate it and verify it. And apart from doing that, you must get the person who said allegedly recorded it, and then it gives a statement.
The National Assembly, through its committees, reassembled to hurriedly vet the remaining permanent secretary nominees. In the interest of time, the committees were time-bound as they had to expedite the vetting process before Parliament proceeds for a long recess on the 2nd of December. The vetting sessions were held concurrently in various locations inside and outside of Parliament ahead of the Thursday deadline given by Speaker Moses Wetangula. The committees will now retreat and prepare the reports, which will then be debated on the floor of the House to ascertain whether the permanent secretary nominees will receive the green light to assume office. There have been murmurs that the committees had already submitted their reports prior to the resumption of the vetting process. More than 20 PS nominees had already been vetted by members of Parliament before the exercise was suspended following a challenge in court.
And we must appreciate that REREC is the social enterprise part of the last mile connectivity. They are doing something not for the commercial point of view. Kenya Power is left with the commercial point of view because the two have different deliverables. So I believe I belong to that school of thought. Let us work on a proper SLA to ensure that there is harmony, there is teamwork, and that way we shall be able to achieve the 100% connectivity.
President William Ruto has officially launched the Hustler Fund, which is Kenya Kwanza's pet project that seeks to offer credit at low interest rates. On the day of its launch, Kenyans who quickly thronged the system in search of credit largely found that most of them were eligible for amounts between 100 shillings and 2,000 shillings, with President Ruto scoffing at those questioning the amount, noting that previous data on record has shown that most of those who use mobile credit facilities have been borrowing within that margin. The launch of the fund happened even as the National Assembly adopted a report by the Committee on Delegated Legislation that anchors the fund in law. NTV's Ibrahim Karanja with the story on the Hustler Fund and the politics revolving around it.
Hustler Fund, Jinue, Jiendeleze.
With the Hustler Fund launched, many Kenyans are asking how much they can access. Well, for starters, the President William Ruto has a loan limit of 2,300 Kenyan shillings on the newly launched Hustler Fund.
Your loan limit is cash 1,600.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua's limit currently stands at 1,600 shillings, while that of Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi is at 2,800 shillings. It is such amounts offered by the Kenya Kwanza government's Hustlers Fund that have formed conversations hours after the product was launched, the president scoffing at those criticizing the money.
If 90% of all these lending platforms are lending between 100 shillings and 2,500, that tells you how important or how much 500 shillings or 1,000 shillings is.
The fund offers a low interest credit, with individuals said to be having a maximum of 50,000 shillings at an interest rate of 8% per annum. That means that if one borrows 1,000 shillings to be repaid in 14 days, they will pay an interest of 3 shillings and 60 cents. While launching the fund, the president also mentioned the role the fund will play in individual savings. The loans are accessible to all Kenyans through their mobile phones across all networks. A number of those who had previously been listed over their credit score will also have a fresh start to borrowing.
Mwenye hana logbook, mwenye hana ndugu ambaye anajulikana, yule mwananchi wa kawaida pia na yeye anaweza kupata pesa ama mkopo kwa bei ama riba ya chini, na anaweza kuendesha biashara yake ama anaweza kujisimamia kwa njia ile amepanga mwenyewe.
As President William Ruto was launching a project that might end up being the hallmark of his administration, Parliament was on the other hand clearing all the legal hurdles as it adopted a report that legalizes the Hustler Fund. The parliamentary process of the fund is still being criticized by Azimio lawmakers, while their Kenya Kwanza counterparts laud President Ruto's move.
Regulations have quickly been channeled without sufficient public participation through the Committee of Delegated Legislation, sneaked into Parliament and voted, and the Exchequer is going to incur 50 billion. We are very clear. We are not begrudging the hustler or the common person the opportunity to get money or to get credit. But let this be the promise that the Kenya Kwanza people gave to these people.
This money was supposed to be free money, money given to the youth, men and women in this country as capital to start business. But what are we seeing now? We realize that the president was making mere statements of puff, and there were misrepresentation of facts.
Kwa hivyo wale wenye pesa mingi, mabwenyenye, na wale watu wa familia kubwa kubwa, nyinyi muende kwa banki hizi kubwa, mchukue pesa huko, mupeleke title, mupeleke logbook, mulipe 13%, 14%, muende huko, mumalizanie huko na wale watu wa kiwango yenu. Hawa mahustlers ya William Ruto hawana logbook, hawana title, ni simu peke yake na yeye mwenyewe ndio waweze kusaidika.
Ibrahim Karanja, NTV.
All right, it's about that time when we look at what is contained in the dailies. And given that we are at the Nation Center, we start with our publications. Topmost, the Daily Nation. And the front page story on this is Ruto reads his bickering CS's The Riot Act. Cabinet secretaries reminded to work as one team. And squabbles, angered by what he said was a failure to adopt the collective responsibility doctrine, President William Ruto called the cabinet secretaries to order, fearing that their public clashes were exposing the nascent Kenya Kwanza administration to ridicule. More on this on page 4 of the Daily Nation. We'll flip there. Another big story on the front page of the Daily Nation. Azimio plots a powerful opposition leader office, and the Nation has seen a document proposing to give the holder of the office to be occupied by Azimio La Umoja One Kenya coalition leader Raila Odinga sweeping powers, including an annual address to Parliament, leeway to nominate persons to constitutional statutory commissions, as well as funding from the Exchequer to, let me check here from my hard copy, as well as funding from the Exchequer to ensure constant oversight of government. More on that on page 5 of the Daily Nation. Here on the top, freedom beckons for Sarah Cohen, Jumwa and Okemo. DPP Haji has applied to withdraw murder cases against the widow of murdered Dutch businessman Tob Cohen and Cabinet Secretary Aisha Jumwa, even as he failed in his bid to extradite former Minister Chris Okemo to the United Kingdom for trial over corruption. And when we look at page 2, here is that report on freedom at last for these parties. Cohen murder widow smells freedom. Family urges court to dismiss DPP's withdrawal application for failure to involve them in making a decision. That is Tob Cohen's family. His family says the decision to withdraw charges against Sarah Wairimu and her co-accused is ill-motivated. All right, so that is that story on page 2. Carries over to page 3, with the DPP seeking to drop murder charges against Juma. And I see here Haji loses bid to extradite Okemo in 1.5 billion shilling graft case. When we flip the page, Ruto reads Riot Act to ministers over quote-unquote reckless remarks. President angered by failure of CSs to adopt collective responsibility doctrine. And I quote from a cabinet secretary here, unnamed, the president directed the CSs that they should henceforth desist from making remarks without without first checking with him, especially on issues with serious implications. And this report by our very own editor, Roseline Obala, our planning editor, Roseline Obala, definitely one to look out for on the Daily Nation. Azimio plots powerful office for Raila coalition working on a constitutional amendment bill to create the office of the official opposition leader. This report by Justice Ochieng, given my eyesight is giving me a bit of a challenge this morning. Let me grab my hard copy and look at some of what he's highlighted in that report. At a glance, roles of proposed leader of the official opposition: 1, be a symbol of national unity; 2, ensure protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms; 3, scrutinize, criticize, and make suggestions of improvements to legislation, policies, and financial proposals by government; survey, appraise, and criticize government administration; ventilate citizens' grievances, address a special sitting of Parliament once every year, and may address Parliament at any other time; examine expenditures and public accounts, seek information on and clarification of government policy and directives; appoint a representative to sit in various select committees for recruitment into the various constitutional and statutory commissions; once every year, report in an address to the nation on all measures taken and the progress achieved in holding the government of the day to account for its affairs and governance; 11, publish in the Gazette the details of the measures and progress achieved and submit a report for debate to the National Assembly on the progress made in fulfilling the international obligations of the Republic; will be a state officer enjoying the trappings of power, including hiring of staff; enjoy protection from legal, I assume that is meant to be immunity. Renee, I hate to put you on the spot. We have Renee Gamau in studio, Betty Wababu. Renee, executive coach as well as an advocate, and Betty, who is a communication and leadership specialist. She's also the CEO of Tafari Consulting. Karibu sana. We also have joining us virtually from Addis Ababa, Rachel Nakitare. She is from IWAT Kenya, and IWAT is for Women in Television and Radio, including myself. So we'll be discussing the mentorship of the next generation of women leaders. But even as we get into that conversation in a little bit, Renee, I'm curious what you make of this proposal for the office of the leader of the opposition that would allow him these privileges.
Well, first of all, good morning.
Good morning.
And I think that it is...
I'm so sorry, I'm being told your mic has a problem. We'll sort it out. Let me just look through the other stories. My apologies for that. We're also expecting Winifred Okumu to come in any moment, and she's from the Africa Youth Trust. So let me continue with the papers. We'll sort out your microphone. I'm curious to get your take on this, Renee. All right, as we sort that out, let's flip the page to what the big story for the Kenya Kwanza government was yesterday, and Kenyans rush to take loans after Hustler Fund launch. President says the fund will unshackle millions from the burden of debts they were unable to pay. There was a question of amounts that was raised by Ibrahim Karanja, and I saw there Rigathi Gachagua was eligible for 1,600 shillings, was it? All right, so here in numbers, 600 number of borrowing requests per second Kenyans made after the Hustler Fund launch. I see 14 number of days after which a borrower is expected to repay a loan. The loan attracts an interest rate of 0.02% per day. Julian Zambuko having interrogated those numbers that were in the cabinet dispatch that were erroneous because they said 0.002, if I'm not mistaken. Julian said, nuh-uh. My master's in economics tells me it is 0.02, not 0.002. All right. I think oh yes, and given it is World AIDS Day, it is the 1st of December. A report here, over half of new HIV infections among adolescents. None of the counties met the mother-to-child transmission reduction targets. Some 10 counties accounted for 57% of the new infections recorded in the country in 2021. All right, I will leave the Daily Nation at that. Is Renee's microphone fine now? Shall we give it a test run? What do you make of, and I hate again to put you on the spot here, but what do you make of these proposals where the opposition, office of the opposition leader is concerned?
First of all, good morning. I think this is a brilliant proposition and one that is well overdue. It's within the tenets of any kind of balanced government that we have a counter-check. And the counter-check within the parliamentary system is to have an opposition. Where we do not have a funded, strong opposition and people who are able to dedicate their time to holding the government in check, then what we have is the danger of a government with a majority that is able to run through all of its agenda without really having any checks and balances and anyone to counter. The office of the opposition is not there for the purpose of just refusing to support government. It's there to check and see, are you fulfilling on what you promised that you would do? Are you delivering on it within budget, on time, to all of the areas where you promised you would? In other words, it brings in inclusive government. And that's important. So I think having this as a proposal and having it officially so is very important to ensure that there is a balance within the parliamentary system, something which we have not had in the past. So really very, very, very welcome indeed. The question will be, how much will it cost Kenyans? That's the real question. I think as with anything, whenever we see these new posts, for those who are taxpayers, the first question is always, how much more will this inflate government? And also, will it be representational? Will the office of the opposition be required to uphold the same tenets, 2/3 gender parity? Will it be required to have a budget which it needs to adhere to? What can we expect in terms of deliverables? What do we hold even them accountable for as citizens? And what is the process of removing a leader of an official opposition in the same way that we have a process for removing a president or a member of parliament or indeed a senator? These are the questions that are still outstanding.
All right. Thanks for that. All right, let's take a look quickly at the other dailies. I am seeing in a minute and a half, I'm meant to have started my conversation. Business Daily, letter linked to Joho family SGR cargo deal goes missing. There was a story that was in the Business Daily yesterday by Edwin Mutai, if I have it right. And documents initiating the terminal deal unavailable. Autoport's freight got irregular sweetheart deal. The report yesterday was he was awarded this facility on forged documents. So you can visit the Business Daily, Daily Nation. You will find the full report that informs this story here today. There, inflation slows for the first time in 9 months amid CBK, I beg your pardon, CBK rate hikes. And I believe that was our top story at the start of the AM Live this morning. You have 14 days to repay Hustler loan. The repayment period for loans for small businesses through the Hustler Fund will be capped at 14 days in a plan that looks set to open a window for small businesses to access cheaper credit. The fund launched yesterday will see a minimum, we'll see, what is that? Font there is a, aha. The fund launched yesterday will see minimum borrowers get 500 shillings, while the largest amount advanced will be 50,000 shillings at an interest rate of 8%. And the bottom there of the ticker, Java House names first female, names first Kenyan CEO. She happens to be a female. And restaurant chain Java House has picked Priscilla Gathungu as its first Kenyan chief executive to replace Derek Van, how do you pronounce that? Houghton, who took over in March last year. The reasons for Mr. Houghton's departure, who joined the chain from KFC, are not clear, but the latest changes signal a revolving door at Java's C-suite. At the top here, efforts to mitigate climate change also generate business opportunities for banks. That's the opinion piece that Bitang Demo has submitted to the Business Daily for this morning. And let's take a look at Taifa Leo Mahasla Watabasamu. There is President William Ruto, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. I see a vendor there with boiled eggs and smokies, it looks like. And also a fellow there with Mahindi Choma. If I remember seeing video of the president biting down on that. Hustler Fund wa Kenya sasa wanaweza kupata mikopo ya serikali maarufu Hustler Fund kupitia simu zao. Mikopo hiyo ilizinduliwa jana jijini Nairobi na Rais William Ruto. Ilianza kutolewa rasmi usiku wa kuamkia leo. Mikopo inapatikana kwa kubonyeza 254 hash, star 254 hash. The code 254, Kenya's code. That's should not be difficult to remember. Kwa kutumia laini ya Safaricom, Airtel au Telcom. Jana Rais Ruto alifichua kuwa maombi 6,000 ya kutaka mikopo yalikuwa yakitumwa kwa kila sekunde. Does that surprise you? Betty, do you think, is it just excitement?
There is an excitement, but people really need to think about it first.
Because I'm seeing, they're saying...
Not just to get loans without plans.
Oh yeah, Taifa Leo is saying 6,000 per second. I did see the Daily Nation says 600. Honestly. On page, let me counter check. That is on page what? That is on page 7, right? Do you see that? On page 7 of the Daily Nation. It says 600 number of borrowing requests per second Kenyans made after the Hustler Fund launch. 600 per second, Renee? Surprising?
Not surprising, but a bit of a problem. What does it say about an economy that is so desperate for cash that the minute that a fund is launched, you will have that number of applications, number one. Number two, what happens in the event of default? And that's where we need to really be looking. First, it says to our formal financial institutions, there's a gap that they are not addressing that is so desperate to be met that as soon as a fund is launched, people will be going for it. Whether it's 600 or 6,000, it portends to a gap in the market. But two, what are the safeguards in the event that payment isn't made, which is where the other funds have fallen foul? What happens to people, especially in these kidogo economies, you know, in our hustler economy? What happens next to them? And in an environment where, as you have reported yourself, only 9% of us are in formal, pensionable employment. We need to think of a solution that allows for funding for small businesses and scaling for businesses to grow a lot faster than just, you know, a fund. It's a great fund. I don't knock it. It's fantastic. But we've got to think what happens beyond the 50,000 as businesses grow. Number two, what happens in default?
All right. Winnie, does it surprise you? I introduced you before you got here. Let me reintroduce you. At this point, we have Winifred Okumu, and she is from the Africa Youth Trust. Were you one of these 600 per second, perhaps?
Not really. Thank you very much, Oli, for hosting me. And personally, I'll talk on behalf of youths. And I know that number, actually, majority of them are youths. And that one tells us that there's a big crisis in Kenya, because if it was launched yesterday, and already within that duration of time, we already have how many applicants? 6,000. So that means there's a big problem. And then the way my colleague is also saying about it is there. What about repayment? And we know the penalty that it's already there. If you can't pay within 14 days, what happens? And this is something that we've even seen with other loans that are online. And you find some of the youths are even throwing, after they default, they throw the number. So are we really addressing the issue? And again, when this hustle fund, because my worry is, was there public participation towards it so that you also get the views of the citizen? Was there public participation that was done? So those are some of the things that we really have to look at it when you're looking at sustainability, because I'm aware we also have got other funds, Affirmative Action Fund, we have WEZO Fund, we have National Government Affirmative Fund, we have Youth Enterprise Development Fund. Are they really helping? Did they do evaluation to find out if these other funds are really supporting the youths? And if not, what are some of the challenges and how can we address such challenges? So I'm seeing there's a very, very big problem with this fund.
Okay, I think in terms of what happens if you don't repay, my understanding was it will impact your future capability to access credit, because it impacts your credit score. Because that was the direction we're moving, right? Away from the blacklist towards having a credit score. Rachel Nakitare appeared next to, she's joining us virtually, was next to Betty there on that screen. But she did warn me that the internet, she's in Addis Ababa and she wasn't too sure about the internet connection. So we'll work to resolve that. Let me move us along. On the front page of The Standard, Hustler game changer. Let's see, dream comes true, and sticking with his campaign promise, President William Ruto launches the Hustler Fund that will see borrowers access credit and at an all-time low interest rate of 8% a year. The low-income earners will not only benefit from the loans, but also save part of what they are borrowing. Front page of the Star. What do they have? Phone lines busy as millions dash for Hustler cash. 8 million Kenyans previously blacklisted get second chance to access loans. What you need to know about Ruto's Hustler Fund. Hustlers to use SMS short code *254# to access the loan. Maximum limit to be 50,000 shillings for personal loans. No guarantor or security required. Loans to be repaid within 14 days. Loan limit to be determined by borrower's credit score. Loan interest capped at 8% per year, only accessible to one mobile number. Once you default, you can access again after full repayment. So there we have it. We're talking about what happens in the event you default. 5% of borrowed funds to go to a savings scheme. Do forgive me. Individuals to access up to 500,000 shillings from February 2023. And from April 2023, groups to borrow up to 10 million shillings. All right, so I will leave the dailies at that point. Transition us onto our conversation. Do we have Rachel back on? All right, so I can see her though. Okay, so they're trying to frame the picture so that we see her properly within the confines of the television screen, which is fitting because she is representing IWAT Kenya, which is the International Association of Women in Radio and Television Kenya. So they run a mentorship program for women, upcoming journalists. So we'll get her take and more from my panel because I want us to take a break in the next few minutes as we get ready for the conversation. But ladies, I'll ask Betty to kick us off. You've been involved in the exercise, let me put it that way, of mentorship for some time. Why is it important to you?
It is very important for me because I'm passionate about the next generation. It's not just about me. We need to look at the generations to come. And for me, I know that I need to leave a legacy. I need to do something that will not just, help me now, benefit me, my generation, but the generations to come.
Oh, okay.
Because this is something that we need to do over and over again and pass the baton.
All right. Betty, I'm told they don't have your sound. What is happening? I'm sorry, today it just appears it's that morning. First it was ready, now it's your mic. Betty, but we'll come back with you on the other side of this break. This will give us a chance to sort out all those technical issues. This is live television after all, so you get it raw and unedited. See you on the other side of this break.
I'm in Kilifi County at the Kenyan coast to find out how a new trend in humanitarian aid that champions direct cash payments is impacting livelihoods.
The Niger Nomads community holds an annual Kure Saleh Festival, a forum to celebrate, network, trade, and discuss sustainable solutions to the challenges the community encounters in breeding their livestock.
I am in Kayanja village of central Uganda to take stock of efforts by humanitarian groups to support some of the poorest communities.
New Sensodyne Repair and Protect with Deep Repair. It's a huge game changer for me. The science is pretty amazing because it really goes deep inside the tooth and repairs tooth sensitivity. It's going to improve the quality of my life in a big way.
Sound engineer, take it
Building on a success.
Future bright, ndo we check it labda dunge digaga za welding.
K2 Mix on NTV.
see? This is how we do it, this is how we get down. Niko shua hii ujaiona, mbona, sinilize mbona.
Discover the exciting world around the showbiz and celebrity news, the hottest mixes from top DJs, mind-blowing interviews on your favorite entertainment show, Kwitu Mix, only on NTV.
On my dark marks, I've tried everything from A to Z, even vitamin C, but hardly any results. Nivea Lumina 630 works from day one, with visible results in just 2 weeks and 71% dark marks reduction in 12. Join the 1 million women already using the #1 Lumina 630 from Nivea.
Did you know?
What I'm about to do, I'm sure nobody expected.
I want to give them an experience that they will never forget. Every performer has 40 hours of rehearsal booked.
With a band?
Yeah.
I mean, niko worried. Siwezi takekwe kama ile kitu kama Fire Festival.
Na kuna ngoma mpya zina come before Soulfest.
Hii Soulfest lakini itahitaji faster changeover.
An artist's worst nightmare, you know, it happened.
We're really in the business of selling emotions, it seems. Hata sikujua kama kulikuwa na kitu kama hiyo ati kuna bo.
Wameanza kutupa mavitu sasa, hii ni scary manze.
Finally everything is sorted out.
Jesus power, super power.
We tend to focus on our outer beauty, but what is our inner beauty like?
Yo, na sisi kama boy tunafeel poa sana tukiget haircut safi sana. Sunday tutakuwa na Bonnie the Barber from Airport.
But I know I'm highly favored.
Na tutakuwa naye Terry from Rebecca and our fashion designer Cynthia from Seamstress Kenya.
So join us from 11:30 to 1 p.m. only on NTV and let's know what's inner beauty. And this is Crossover!
I know I'm highly.
Crystal Rivers Residences, the future of fine living.
Africa is a continent that has contributed very little to the global warming problem, yet suffers some of its worst impacts. As a storyteller, I see firsthand this impact of climate change. I see it in the faces of the people whose stories I tell. I hear it in their voices. I see the despair and desperation in their eyes. This is why talking about climate change is something we must all do. I, Zainab Wandati, will be participating in the Kusi Ideas Festival 2022. See you then.
This week on The Best Of, we look at what it takes to keep avocados constant.
You only learn you have the wrong seedling after 3 years. Then you say, oops, wrong fruit.
Organic farming is the present and the future.
Once they taste your fruit and when it has a certain high percentage of chemicals, then you lose the market.
And we get a proper agroeconomic education.
The difference between me and you, who has bought on the roadside, I am 1 year ahead.
Money grows on trees.
As little as they are, they fetch a lot of money.
On The Best of Avocado Farms.
Crystal Rivers Residences, the future of fine living.
It is fair to say that over the journey, Swiss football has not been considered a major threat to the superpowers. No club has ever reached a European final, and the national team has never gone beyond the quarterfinals of a major event. But there is a feeling and a hope Switzerland's national team might be about to change that at the 2022 World Cup.
We know your flavor.
And that's how you inspire us to always deliver the best quality meals made fresh with locally sourced ingredients. Galitos. Bold African flavor. Get the Galitos Hot Box and a 500 ml Coke soda at just 699 Kenya shillings.
Welcome back to AM Live this morning. In the course of the break, we cast out all those dark forces that were causing trouble with our microphones. Those of us recovering from the flu just needed to make sure our makeup is in blowing my nose that I didn't wipe off my lipstick, or the majority of it. But Betty, before we went on the break, I just want also to assure our viewers that we have Rachel Nakitare joining us virtually. I can see her on the screen again, next to Betty, Rachel Nakitare, International Association of Women in Radio and Television, the Kenya chapter. But Betty, we have resolved the microphone issue. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank
you for that.
I had asked you,
yes,
why get involved in mentorship?
Because for me, why I'm involved in mentorship, because this is a passion for me. I want to pass the back, and I want to pass the back, and the person that I'm passing the back to need to be strong. And I need to tell them how then do they become strong, by modeling and by actually doing the real mentorship. And mentorship more in example, how I live my life, how I do my stuff, and telling them the things that they need to know. Because we have a generation to take care of after us. And that's what drives me. That's what motivates me.
Okay.
Yes.
Renee, you often hear people say women are their own worst enemy, and then the worst boss you can have is a woman, you know. What do you make of those sentiments?
I make of them pretty much the same as I would make of toilet paper after its use. These are the kind of statements that are made. Sorry, if you haven't met me already, you'll find out very quickly that I'm a very straight talker, which is why Olive tries to find me from time to time. Listen, we tell each other the narratives, or we repeat the narratives that give us or that make us weak, in order to ensure that we are able to perpetuate a certain system of balance and control. So stories like women are their worst enemies. Statements like the worst boss to have is a woman. Theorizes that men are a homogeneous being, that all men are the same way, and that men do not compete against one another, or that competition amongst men is okay, but competition amongst women is not. The assumption that women make for the worst bosses is a comparative to what? It is a comparative to a patriarchal male form of what a boss should be. So if he is very direct, he is assertive. If she is very direct, she is aggressive. What is it? It is all underplaying or underpinning a bigger narrative, which is that women are not worth sitting at the table. It is such an old and tired and outdated way of thinking, and it's not buttressed by the truth, the facts on the ground. Look at some of the largest corporations, whether we're starting with global institutions that are being run today, whether in the for-profit, not-for-profit, or developmental sector, that are being run or being headed by women who are doing exemplary work. Where do we find the statistics that match, or the facts that match statements like those? We don't. Therefore, it is a narrative that is about as useful as used toilet paper, and one that should be put to rest.
Okay. And Rachel, why did iWords Kenya get involved in mentorship of the next generation of women in leadership in the media and in other sectors? Why get involved? Was there a need for it? Was it necessary? What was the motivator behind it?
Hello.
Right.
Am I on, Olive? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you, but my soundman, Peke, I don't think my guest in studio can hear Rachel. So if we could amplify her sound.
Yeah, what is your question again?
I was asking, iWords Kenya is involved in mentorship What motivated yourself in Kenya, in the Kenya chapter, for instance, to get involved in mentorship?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, mentorship, as somebody who's been broadcasting all these years, is a passion. But what motivated the IWAD Kenya chapter to get into mentoring upcoming university students is the fact that we realized that a lot of the female students enroll into journalism courses in the Kenyan universities, especially the public universities. But by the time they are completing the course and joining the industry, the number begins to dwindle. Some get in and drop along the way before they are even 5 years into the practice. And so we realize there are issues that they're dealing with that can come up that they may not have anticipated. And so with the help of the US Embassy in Nairobi, we thought it is good that we try to understand some of the challenges that they have and begin to work with them while they're still in school and prepare them for the challenges that they may face when they join the industry. For example, there are some things that you may not be taught in class, issues of sexual harassment that are, as you know, that has been reported in a lot of the newsrooms. How do you deal with those situations when you get into media organizations? So we work with them, we take them through, of course, professional ethics, what is required of them as media professionals, but also what is required of them when they get to the media houses in terms of just relating and working with people and knowing their rights and using the opportunity that they have to really realize their full potential.
All right. Whitney, I'll ask you to come in at that point. Clearly, Rachel, Betty are involved in mentorship, Renee as well. Renee, you seek to have people realize their full potential, be it male or female. But Whitney, in your experience, have you had a woman in your life who's helped build you up, aside perhaps from your mother or your sisters?
Oh, thank you very much. Actually, I have one role model that I normally look up to. And if I can share my experience, because my childhood was not I experienced some violations in life. And it was at a point that I even wanted to drop out of school. And through mentorship, my mom, let me start first of all appreciating my mom, because she really did a lot in my life, ensuring that I completed my high level and also my undergraduate, because that time my dad didn't have a job, and she was the one who was standing in on behalf of my dad. And that's why I normally appreciate women who are at the forefront fighting for the rights of women, because I've personally experienced that. So I also have some mentors who normally mentor me. I have Professor Grace from Kenyatta University. She's my mentor, because most of the time when I see her and some of the challenges that I normally undergo through, she normally comes in and helps me. So I can say that I have mentors who normally guides my path in terms of professional growth and even personal growth. And I also work with, I also mentor actually young women, especially the ones who are living in the informal sector of Nairobi and Mombasa. I have 4,000 young urban women that I'm mentoring, because we are really creating a safe space for them whereby they can amplify their voices, because you realize that these women who are staying in the informal sector, they really have a lot of challenges and nobody listens to them. And they normally face drug and substance abuse. When you look at teenage pregnancy, is also very high. They also experience sexual and gender-based violence, which is not even being reported, and they don't access justice. So there are people that I create safe spaces for them, even through the organization that I work for, whereby they amplify their voices and they look at some of the policies that are there, which can really support them in terms of bodily integrity and economic security.
Okay.
Yes.
Betty, you know, we're using the term mentorship. I'm using the term mentorship with the assumption that whoever is watching or listening understands the concept.
Yes.
What does mentorship entail?
Mentorship, it's about helping other people. Not just the young people, you can be mentoring even young adults. It's helping other people to find their path. I normally say it's to help people to be all that they can be and to get the best out of them. So that is what mentorship means to me. And that is what I practice. Because you realize that there are people who have so much abilities, capabilities, They are so talented, but along the way, and especially women, along the way their voices are cut. They can't voice they can't voice what they are going through. They cannot be given that chance to grow because of many other challenges in life. But when they have someone to hold their hand and help them to find their path, to be able to get out, the best out of them, then to me that is mentorship. And that is what mentorship entails, ensuring that someone gets the best, you help people to be the best version of themselves.
Okay.
Yes.
Renee, what does it mean to you, mentorship?
I think I'll add to. So I, as we like to say in law, I join issue with my colleague. And I'd add to that, it's also opening the doors for others, being in those spaces where their names are not in the room and bringing those names into the room. And also supporting them and opening the pathways and the opportunities for people to step in. We often speak about mentorship for the next generation, but I'm actually beginning to more and more believe that mentorship should be for the person directly behind you or those immediately behind you. When we cross generations, and it is important that we do, so I'm not knocking it, when we cross generations and leave gaps, what is left is a group of people who could inherit the positions that we have, but are not able to because we have not carried them along, we have not supported them along, we have not sponsored them along the way to take over those roles as we move to others. So it's a little bit more deliberate. It's building the self, but it is also creating the spaces and formulating the pathways and executing strategies that enable those who are directly behind us and those who are besides us to move to the next level. And it's important today because as we can see across the world, across the country, within the counties, we're seeing a greater move for women-led leadership. But rather than be haphazard about it, what is important is that we create strategic frameworks and we move strategically, whether individually or in corporates or in groups, to ensure that there are more women in more spaces, not for the sake of it, but because, as we know from the 2019 census, we're almost 50-50 men and women. And because we know now from multiple studies and from experience that female-led leadership, what is being called today feminist leadership, brings in an aspect of cooperation, an aspect of inclusivity, an aspect of redistribution of resources that so far has been elusive in our leadership that we need for our private sector profitability, for our public sector inclusivity, for our climate change. So it doesn't just, it's not just a good thing to do. It's the next thing that we need to do in order to move our countries, our continent, our communities to the next level. So mentorship is that, it's everything that she has said, plus strategically opening doors and bringing people who are not usually at the table into the room, onto the table with a voice and able to speak for themselves.
All right, Rachel, I'll ask you to come in at this point. What has been your experience working with these university students? Is there evidence that it makes a difference, that it has made a difference to them?
Absolutely, Olive. In fact, like you rightly said, I'm in Addis, just to start where I am, attending the Internet Governance Forum, whose theme this year is Resilient Internet for a Shared, Sustainable and Common Future. And I've come here because I'm looking at the internet as common good, and I'm looking at one of the areas that we deal with in the mentorship program is digital media, how to take advantage of the digital platforms. And how do I meet here? I meet one of the girls that we have mentored from Moi University that came in through our link with one of our mentors to get interested in issues of internet, issues of digital security, and is now attached to KICTANET, Kenya ICT Action Network, courtesy of the IWAT link because of how we've been working with them, and one of our mentors then was linked to KICTANET. So what I'm saying is we have worked with about 115 girls now. We have this cohort that is from Kibabi and Maseno University of 20, which brings it to about 135. and I can count for you for the 100. I will tell you where they all are and what they are doing. I've seen some of them come up and talk about incidences of sexual harassment, something they would never have talked about, but because of the skills we've given them, the tips we've given them, the empowerment, telling them, you know, you do not keep quiet. Silence doesn't help. You need to speak up, and you have a right to be where you are. You do not need to give any sexual favors to anybody to get to those positions. They're able to come up and speak out about such issues, which have been very difficult. We've seen some of them get into media houses now, writing and reporting better than even some of us have done in the past. And so it's very gratifying, actually, when you walk with them and they're reporting to you, because mentorship is a life journey. You know, it's a lifelong journey. It's not a session where you'll go in for 1 month, 2 months and leave. We start with them for a year, but after that, we continue working with them. Every time there's an opportunity, because we've dealt with them, we know their strengths, I'm able to identify a girl and say, this girl has very good interviewing skills. 2 years ago, we identified one of the girls from Maseno to interview the ambassador of the US, you know, during the International Women's Day, because we realized she's very good at broadcast, she's very good at interviewing skills, you know, and so we give her that, we give them that opportunity. And I can continue counting, but it's been very gratifying to just see them walk, and they continue to ask, because we work with them. We are about 15 mentors drawn from different media houses, each with different strengths. Some are good at broadcast, others are good at print, others are good in English, like we have some from Taifa Leo, that are our reference point when it comes to language, for those that are interested in Swahili. So it's very gratifying to see that these girls have been identifying with all of us, knowing that they can call upon any of us at any time, and they'll get the support that is required. So I could go on with the list on and on and on, and then the mentors give their time. You know, they're all professionals working in different areas, but they create this time to be able to listen, to be able to identify the gaps, and to be able to nurture them and work with them. So it has actually been very, very gratifying. And all the 111, I can tell you, are in places now. They're placed either in media houses, in the corporate world, doing their own small business, but at least each one of them is doing something and they're in touch with their mentors.
Okay, so Betty, yes. In the private sector,
yes,
do you see those memes of Polly Kapigade, for instance, when you hear he's gotten another job, and people will say, I want the gods of Igade, you know, why can't they also intercede in my life so I can get such opportunity? There's a gentleman who is now, I think, heading Stanbic Bank, and previously he'd headed, is it KCB? I can't remember his name. Sorry?
Oigara?
Yes, Joshua Oigara. Is it Joshua Oigara? I can't recall. I will Google. That is what Google is for when your memory fails you. But do you think some of these opportunities for these gentlemen in the private sector have been created through connections, networks? Are they a product of mentorship? For example, Polly Kapigade, many linked him or have linked him to Chris Kirubi, who was previously at myself and Renee's chairman, in the interest of full disclosure, at Capital FM. Are some of these the benefits of mentorship? Because Renee talked about opening doors, mentioning names in rooms where the people are not, so that this is not just cross-generational, but about the person who's coming up behind you.
Exactly, absolutely it is, Olive, because collaborations are very important. Networks, strategic alliances are very critical for growth. And those are some of the things that, as women, we need to put in place, as Renee has said. Because how do we open doors for other women especially? We encourage that young women, and all women actually, as a matter of fact, in leadership, they need to create strategic alliances. And one of the challenges that we have is when women think they can do it alone. What I encourage women to do is to network. Networking is critical for any growth, and men are very good in that. Men are good at creating networks. They have spaces, they create, they go, like now there's football. And even those football, men are still cutting deals. Men are still telling the other man, there is opportunity here. Did you see this? Did you know this? They are talking, they're having conversations around that. They are not just going out there, for example, and just having a good time, not just watching football. They are doing something more for their lives. And that is where the spaces that as women we need to get to. And as women who are, you know, like us, what we need to do is to help these other, you know, female generations, leaders that we are looking into, and even those, like she has correctly said, those who are beside us and those who are behind us, to let them know the importance of networking. Very critical. Networking is important. Having strategic alliances is very important. Collaborations where you don't feel like you can do it all alone, where I need to know what is her strength and, you know, incorporate, you know, collaborate with her. Her strength and my strength, we complement each other and grow together. And that is the where we are supposed to go. That's the path we are supposed to take as women leaders. That is the path that we encourage the young, upcoming, emerging women leaders to get into. That you cannot be a loner and, you know, and get your victories alone. You need to collaborate with others. You need to network. And actually be where it is happening. The challenge has been, and this is what I'm encouraging women, be where things are happening. You can't just be somewhere and nothing is happening where you are. So if you need to grow in a certain direction, you know where is your focus, you understand where you want to go, because the other thing is that your goals must be very clear. And this is what I say, you must find your true north. And when you find your true north, then you need to have people who believe in your true north to help you, you know, be focused. Your goals must be clear, and your values must be clear. And that is what we talk about, then, you know, your true north. And once you get the true north, get focused, and then look at where can I get more help? Where can I build more skills? How can I get, you know, networks? Who are these people in the spaces that I am in, and how can I be helped? How can I create networks with them? How can I have strategic alliances with them? And, you know, do it, you know, be there, because that's where it's happening. But if you don't know where you're supposed to be, it's not clear what are your goals, what your values are, then you'll find yourself always wandering and wasting a lot of time. And so for me, what I believe in is that, like, for example, the way you said about Igade, and even many others, how is it that we have them changing jobs now and then? It's about strategic alliances, it's about those collaborations, it's about networking, and what I can tell women is, let's be where things are happening. Know what you're looking for, and find those people in those spaces. And it's not just collaborating with just other women, including those men. Let's have them in our networks. Let's learn from them. Let's learn what is it that they are doing that we can do. Borrow a leaf, and, you know, that becomes a quantum leap for each of us. So that's the way I would look at it, that when you see people are able to move from one job to another, and it looks so easy, it's not just, it didn't just happen. There must be some intentionality. There must be some, you know, deliberation. Someone is completely deliberate. You want to do it. You're intentional. You have thought about it. You have done your homework. You've done your background. You have done something. You've gotten involved. You've gotten involved, and you want to do it. So, and one of the gaps that I see is that sometimes there are many opportunities that are there, for example, for networking for women. But we have other, you know, social responsibilities. You're a mother. And for example, you're maybe even a young mother, not even an older mother like Betty, maybe a younger mother. And so you want to rush. We're thinking about our husbands. We're thinking about our children. And it has been very easy for women to forget themselves. They do everything for others except for themselves. And one of the things I've encouraged women, including myself, I am married. I have 5 children, Olive, but I needed to find a balance. And the balance is this. If I want to be a good mother or a good wife, I must take care of myself first. Because if I am mentally I'm stable, I am good, I have what we call, you know, mental health. I'm doing well, physically I'm doing well, I am at peace, I am not stressed out, then I can be a better wife, and I can be a better mother, I can be a better sister, I can be a better employee or a better boss. But sometimes that is where, as women, we lose the gap. We are just thinking about others except ourselves. Okay. So if there are these opportunities that have been given to us, and their networkings, I'm encouraging women, be where it is happening. Check those networking forums. Check where there is something about women that is happening. Okay. Go there and sharpen your skills.
All right.
Yes.
And Renee, she leads me up to my next question, because she talked about social responsibilities. Betty tells us you don't look like you're a mother of 5. Looking good, so you're taking care of yourself. Self-care, muhimu. But Renee, a lot of people, they imagine it's either or, you know, career or family, because the demands on the man and the woman in our social, cultural setting, context are not the same. What do you make of that? Or are we making too much of it?
I think it is what we make of it. There's a phenomenon which has dramatically changed the workplace and the future of work. And in fact, the present of work, not just the future of work. And that was the advent of COVID. And I think we can now historically speak of a pre-COVID and a post-COVID period insofar as the workplace is concerned. And pre-COVID, the demands may have been for time as an exchange for money, presence as an exchange for pay. And so if you were not in the office between certain times, then it was viewed that perhaps you were not delivering as you should. What COVID taught us by keeping us all at home for very long periods of time is that it is possible for there to be performance without being physically present, and for deliverables to be based on the activity that needs to be done rather than the physical presence of a human being. We're seeing across the world a change in how the workplace is. I think recently there's just been a report on 100 companies in the UK moving their work week to a 4-day work week with the same pay as a 5-day work week, but understanding and appreciating that the work can be delivered in different ways from different fora in different environments, but still be able to bring back to the company the value of the person that it has employed. Now, the question becomes one which I think she had said, which is one of mindset. And mindset is always a much more difficult thing to change. And here's the thing. In this new paradigm, what worked in the past cannot continue to work in the way in which it did, and we expect same or even better results. So right now, what it is, I think, in terms of the clash or the challenge for us is to let go of the notion that things need to be done in a certain way. Work needs to be done in the presence. There are some jobs that will require some presence. We have to be in this studio. I don't even know that we have to be in the studio.
No,
I think
clearly,
we've got
because
enough technology.
Rachel is here from Addis Ababa.
Exactly. Rachel can be in Addis Ababa. You could be in your front room for all that you know. And we were all sent these virtual backgrounds, so we look like we are. We know that we have television stations and that we have media that is running like this and very successfully. Therefore, the intersection of technology with human capacity is allowing our work experiences to be different. And the question now is one of embracing it, which brings an interesting facet to mentorship, since this is the topic that we're on.
Yes.
Mentorship by younger, more tech-savvy, more open-minded individuals towards mentoring older, more technically skilled, better experienced people in embracing new technology to further their careers, their experience of life, and their expression of who they are. So whereas before we thought of mentorship as a, you know, older to younger and it's going to come one way, we now have the opportunity to open it up, and not just the opportunity, in order for us to reinvent ourselves. All of us are going to have to open ourselves to the possibility that a teen can teach you something about an app that will make it a significant difference to your experience, to your ability to reach your market. If you will allow yourself to be humble enough to say, I have the technical know-how on the subject matter, but I have no idea how to put it out there. Exactly. And I need somebody who's able to do that. And therefore opens our opportunity to learn and to grow, not just from those who have been in the field for longer, but now for those who haven't, precisely because they haven't been in the field for that long, and therefore they're challenging every single paradigm and every single thinking. Let me inject one more thing, if I may. that there's a group that you spoke of about, you know, the women who are in informal urban settings, or women who are at the bottom of what we call the economic pyramid, who are the majority of our women, who are not the women who are represented here at the present time, who, if we do not take care of, then we risk collapsing a society in the most desperate of ways and in the most unnecessary. And let me present another group that I work with, women in and women coming out of prisons. 73% of the women in prisons, Olive, you know this, and we've just done the survey, and by we, I mean Clean Start, which is the organization where I sit, on which, one of the organizations on whose board I sit. 73% of the women in prison today are in prison for non-violent, poverty-related crimes. That is to say what? She was selling without a license. She was selling things that did not have a KEBS certificate. She was selling outside of the designated area.
Or illegal.
She was selling counterfeit, or was deemed to have been selling illegal, or was, here's a crime which, you know, you'd have thought 50, almost 60 years past independence we'd have gotten rid of. She was loitering with intent to commit immoral, with immoral purposes, whatever the heck that is in this age. She loitering with intent to commit a violation of morality.
I didn't even know there was such an offense.
And as we are getting rid of them in the penal code, which I'm certainly hoping that this parliament does, I think that's one of the first things it should do, we are bringing them back, especially the loitering, the licensing laws, we're bringing them back in our county regulations. And therefore, the women that she is mentoring are ending up in the places where I am going, to the 18 prisons that we work in so far. Because, not because they are incapable, but because they are poor. And once you have a prison experience, prison is designed to destroy the human spirit, to reconstruct that
Not
woman.
reform?
We could say reform, and they are working very, very hard towards reformation. But this prison experience itself, in its design 70, 80, 100 years ago, was not designed with reformation. We are reforming the prison system in order to reform the people. The way it was designed was the crushing of the human spirit. It was for punishment. This was its original intent. Now, reformation and the work that is being done to reform is awesome, but reformation must include the next step if we're going to talk about mentorship. It must include that when she comes out of those gates, a woman who went in for 6 months because she was caught illegally cutting firewood so that she could cook for her family because she cannot afford gas. And we know that she will go back into that forest because she needs to cook for her family tonight. It's to look at the next stage of what mentorship means within our companies, our corporations, our and within the opportunities for employment and transformation. And to say for women at these levels, what does it mean to lift them out of the place where they are selling tomatoes on the ground and running away from Kanjo, to the next step in terms of their business, to the next step in terms of how they live, to the next step in terms of their employment, even whether they are mamafuas. What is the next step for them? Because for the majority of our population, urban and rural, the real challenge is how to change the trajectory of those lives and to transform them to dignified living that allows them to be a full expression of who they are. So even as we speak of mentorship, and I agree, mentorship within these networking opportunities, which we must do with more deliberation so that we can be able to open many more spaces and opportunities quickly. It is ultimately with a view that women in Kibra no longer live in open sewer situations. It is so that they are not sitting at the corner waiting that there is a car that will stop and give them a job for 500 shillings. If we're to move the needle, our mentorship ultimately must reach the majority of our sisters at that level. Then we will know that the work that we're doing is making a difference, not just for a small group of English-speaking Walami and Mabarbi, but that it is making a difference for 50% of the population, the 50% of whom give birth to, care for, protect, nurture, teach the other 50% and themselves anyways. Which means that this is the point at which we actually gain as a nation. And that's really where our mentorship efforts should be directed towards, or that should be where we would be looking to change.
All right, so where we can have the biggest impact.
Where we can have the biggest impact.
All right, so we need to take a break, but when we come back, Winnie, perhaps you can tell us a little bit. Winnie Okumu is from Africa Youth Trust. You can tell us a little bit about what mentorship in that informal setting looks like, right? And then I'm curious to hear from Rachel on the challenges one encounters in the exercise and the mentorship experience.
Enjoy early Christmas offers. Join us on our open day on 26th November 2022. Call us on 0790-771677 or SMS LAND to 21595 for more info.
Mitigation of and adaptation to climate-induced risk is an expensive affair necessitating investment of heavy capital, and that's why conversation around green finance has gained traction over the recent years. How do we structure the products? How do we take them to market? How do we ensure there's investor appetite for these instruments? I, Julian Samboko, will be attending the Kusi Ideas Festival this year, moderating conversation around green and sustainable financing. Join us.
We tend to focus on our outer beauty, but what is our inner beauty like?
Yo, na sisi kama boy tunafeel poa sana get haircut safi sana. Sunday tutakuwa na Bonnie the Barber from Airport.
But I know I'm highly favored.
Na tutakuwa naye Terry from Rebecca and our fashion designer Cynthia from Seamstress Kenya.
So join us from 11:30 to 1 p.m. only on NTV and let's know what's inner beauty. And this is Crossover!
I know I'm highly.
Crystal Rivers Residences, the future of fine living.
Africa is a continent that has contributed very little to the global warming problem, yet suffers some of its worst impacts. As a storyteller, I see firsthand this impact of climate change. I see it in the faces of the people whose stories I tell. I hear it in their voices. I see the despair and desperation in their eyes. This is why talking about climate change is something we must all do. I, Zainabu Andati, will be participating in the Kusi Ideas Festival 2022. See you then.
This week on The Best Of, we look at what it takes to keep avocados constant.
You only learn you have the wrong seedling after 3 years. Then you say, oops, wrong fruit.
Organic farming is the present and the future.
Once they test your fruit and find it has a certain high percentage of chemicals, then you lose the market.
And we get a proper agroeconomic education.
The difference between me and you, who has bought on the roadside, I am 1 year ahead.
Money grows on trees.
As little as they are, they fetch a lot of money.
On the best of avocado farms.
Go is about thriving, reaching for the stars. It's about exploring new ideas, securely and safely, from the palm of your hands. It's go time with M-Pesa Go.
We know your flavor, and that's how you inspire us to always deliver the best quality meals made fresh with locally sourced ingredients. Galitos, bold African flavor.
Get the Galitos Hot Box and a 500 ml Coke soda at just 699 Kenya shillings.
All right, so we are continuing the conversation off camera, and Betty was telling us about a book we need to read, Play Like a Man, Win Like a Woman. But perhaps, Winnie, you can come in at this point with what does mentorship look like for the women who, unlike ourselves, as Renee has rightly pointed out, don't have the privilege of being here in studio.
Thank you very much, Olivia. And when I talk about mentorship in the informal sector, it entails a lot because number one, these are women that have not been empowered. They don't know their rights, and they don't have some of the opportunities that other women have. And they're also facing several challenges in their lives. As I mentioned, the issue of teenage pregnancy, it's very high. Sexual harassment is also very high, and also HIV and drug and substance abuse. So I'll give an example of the women that I mentor in Mkuru informal sector. Actually, I can say that right now in Mkuru I have 2,000 young urban women that we are mentoring. So we are basically creating a safe space for them, whereby they can amplify their voices, and we are also training them. So from the trainings, we train their leaders, and then the leaders are able to cascade that information. And some of the areas that we are looking at is the legal framework that are already there, especially when we are talking about sexual reproductive health rights, because we know that when you look at the children that they are bearing, actually they become pregnant at a very tender age, and even the issue of access to contraceptives is still an issue. Like right now, when we started this conversation, you realize that we have scarcity of condoms. Then what does that mean? And when they access some of these contraceptives in their hospital, they're being told they're not there. And remember, they're sexually active. So some of when they come to these safe spaces, we are able to train them, and after training them, they're able to cascade that information now at their safe space. So they are able to identify, to pick issues that they really need to advocate for. The other issue that we are also looking at is gender-responsive public services, whereby these are some of the structures that the government needs to implement. Mm-hmm. So we are talking about water. If this water is not available, what does it mean? It means that this young girl will have to wake up very early in the morning to go and fetch water. Mm. So you'll find that time it's being wasted when they're going to fetch water. And then they can also experience sexual and gender-based violence because they wake up very early in the morning. So it means they have to pass along the road whereby there are no even street lights. So we are able to bring them on board, and then they identify what are some of their issues that are really affecting them. Because when you don't have gender-responsive public services, then it means even the roles that they're going to play at the household level, it's going to be, they're going to have several responsibility. Because it means you're going to take more time looking for water, fetching for water. Then when you come, you're already tired. And then there are also other responsibility that is also waiting for you. So they are able to identify, and then after identification, they are also able to bring the duty bearers, not the decision makers, so that they see how they can be supported. And we are happy to say that in such areas, we've seen a lot of improvement. They've advocated for street lights, because majority of these women, they normally do their business in the evening. And in the evening, if the street lights are not there, then it means they're also vulnerable. They can be marked, they can also be sexually abused. So when we have street lights, at least they can also do their business. They can extend it up to odd hours. And then they also have money, because if you don't have money in your pocket, then it means you become more vulnerable. So we are also looking at issue of public daycare, because majority of daycare that we have, they are private sector. And we don't have public daycare that really support it, redistribute the roles that they are playing at the household level. So what do we want? We want public daycare. Because if you have a public daycare, and I can give an example during COVID, when we were hit by COVID-19, what happened? Majority of parents were really, they were saying that when are these schools going to be open? Because that was the time that the teenage pregnancy was very high. So what does it tell us? That parents are safe when their children are in school. They are really safe when their children are in school. So we want public daycare whereby these young women can secure their children there, and they can also participate. And I'm always, I'm very much interested when it comes to public participation, because I always believe that when it comes to development issue, that is the time that you can voice out some of your priorities that needs to be captured in terms of development, and even you can hold your government accountable. Then the other thing that we're also talking about is now the issue of unpaid care work. Of which, the time we talk about unpaid care work, what normally comes to people's mind is that it's like women are demanding their husband to pay them. That is not the conversation here. The conversation is, we really want the government to recognize the roles that women play at the household level. And by recognition means they need to start putting structures that redistribute the role that women play. For instance, if we have good roads, it means women can do their businesses. If you're a woman who is coming from Homa Bay and you grow your potatoes, instead of selling your potatoes, sweet potatoes in Homa Bay, you can move them to Nairobi. So it means in terms of revenue collection, even in terms of money in your pocket, you will have that amount. Then we are talking about a modern market. And when I'm talking about modern market, what does it entail? A market that has got all the facility. When we're talking about wash sanitation, because we know that women are very vulnerable when it comes to ablution. So if that place is not hygiene, chances are women can even be infected by UTI. So we need a modern market whereby we have, when you talk about sanitation, proper sanitation, waste management, because right now there is a cholera outbreak in it's called Markiti, Mdurwa. It was closed. And when it's being closed, what happens to women? Because majority of beneficiaries in such markets are women. So it means if it's being closed, then it means I cannot have any source of income. So what we are saying that if we can have gender-responsive public services in terms of water, in terms of health, because these women, they are sexually active. And when they're sexually active and they don't control, then it means they will, every year a woman will be giving birth. Then what does it mean to that young woman? It means in terms of even productivity, these women cannot be productive in the society. Then the other thing that we are looking at apart from unpaid, so when I'm talking about unpaid care work, I'm talking about we have legal frameworks that recognize the roles that women play at the household level. And by recognition, it means the government will now start putting structures, gender-responsive public services that will reduce the roles that women play. For instance, if you have a daycare, so it means I will leave my child and I'll be able to participate in development issue in my community. If daycare is not there, I can't go. And that's why you find that when it comes to even issue of public participation, majority of women do not participate. When you look at the people who attend, majority are men, you see. And when women do not participate in such spaces, it means their issues are not going to be captured and will still be living in absolute poverty. Okay. So we really want if the government can bring on board gender-responsive public services, daycare institution, modern market, the issue of water, road, health, education, all under one roof, so that these women can have opportunity even to do other duties that are being assigned. Because right now I can give an example. We already, we are in the process of formulation CIDP3. And then in CIDP3, that is the time that priorities are being...
For those of us who don't understand, what CIPD3 is.
Okay, so when I talk about CIDP3, it's County Integrated Development Plan for the county, whereby it is a plan for 5 years. So it means that right now we have a new government that already is in place. So they need to come with a plan for 5 years. So for this plan to happen, it means that they need to go to the community so that they identify what are some of the priorities that needs to be captured within that period of 5 years. So it means if women do not participate in such places, then as much as we are talking about gender equality, there is no way we are going to reach there in 2030. We'll still be lagging behind. So we have to ensure that we create spaces for these women. And another thing, we need legal frameworks that support women in terms of development. And when I'm talking about legal frameworks, I'm talking about even in institute, like we need to have, I'm very happy that where I work, at least right now, we've come up with the national policy on women economic empowerment. Because you know, when you have policies, it means that in terms of even interventions and even budget that are really focusing on women's development, then they're going to be captured. But again, the issue is implementing these policies now is a big challenge.
All right, which is why I take it we need more women in positions of leadership, because they're more sensitive to some of these issues. You talked about gender responsive public services, such as water, because a woman will better understand what another woman goes through, ensuring that there's water for the family to use. And I want to cross over to Addis Ababa, Renee, but what about those who are watching and saying, Renee says 50+% of Kenya is women. Why can't women elect other women to office? Why do we need affirmative action positions? Because you've told us women are not their worst enemy.
I love that question. I was like waiting for it with that. I was like this with my tennis racket waiting for that question, because we've just come out of an election and the answer is in the facts themselves. Number one is the process of nomination. And we saw that in the last election. The process of nomination that first requires that there be a certain amount of money that the potential nominee has. FIDA worked very, very hard prior to the last election to see that we would have a greater number in terms of quantities of women who would be nominated to electable positions. So what the political parties have done in the past, just in the very, very short answer, is in order to meet the Political Parties Act and the requirement of the Registrar of Political Parties, they will nominate women, but they will nominate them to what are called unwinnable seats. So where that party is very unpopular anyways, and so they know they have no chance in winning, then they will field the women there, and then they'll be able to say, see, we fielded women, they did not win, we've done our part. Now, the next level is to, first of all, to just check on that. And we've seen it in the results. We've seen the greater numbers of women, the increase in the numbers at the governor's level, at the MP's level, because there was a concerted effort to ensure that women were vying in areas where they could win. The party ticket was going to a woman who was already popular in the area, but in an area where there had been a political party investment in ensuring that they have the capacity of taking that seat. And we've seen the responses. So actually we are winning. Number two, there's a presumption that women are able to vote in the same way that men can. They aren't. We know that on the day of polling, when the polling stations open, not every woman will have the 10, the 12, the 8, the 7 hours to go and queue on the line, especially if she's got younger children and she does not have daycare. Number three, there's the issue of national IDs and having national IDs. And the proportion of women who have national IDs, which is the first step, and who have been, who are on the voter register, which is on the second step for them to be able to vote. And so it's a lot more complex than women just go and vote for other women. But the truth of the matter is that if you compare with past parliaments, we've done better this time. And we should not only celebrate that, we should now augment that in public leadership, as we're seeing with the cabinet secretaries and the permanent secretaries who have been, or the permanent secretary nominations, within the parliament, within the judiciary, within the public service, at both national and at county level. And then also look at the quality of the women who are being brought in, not just from a qualitative point of view of education, but the diversity of the experience. When we see women such as the nominated senator who is visually impaired, who is at the Senate and able to advocate for persons with disability, as well as for women's experience within that, then we expand the voices. When we hear of conversations such as Rachel is having in Addis Ababa, where they're having conversations about networking and internet, and now putting internet almost at the same level as electricity or water, that we should all be able to access. What is she and her colleagues doing? They are expanding the opportunities for women's expression to be heard and to be measured. And that, I think, is exciting. So it's not all bad.
It's not all bad.
It's not all bad. There's more to be done. We can celebrate where we are, but it tells us the efforts that we have made have brought us thus far, which means with a little bit more effort, we can get to the place of 50-50. And not because we don't want men there. No, it's because we want everyone there. And right now, those who are absent at the table are largely still women.
Okay. Rachel, Renee segued you. She talked about the internet and giving women voice. Tell us, what lessons have you learned in your mentorship experience?
Yeah, thank you, Olive. I think there's more good, like there's more positive impacts that we can brag about than the negative, but nonetheless, in any situation, there are always challenges. And as you know, the mentorship program is very specific to women, female, general. It has very specific areas we need to look at. But of course, the way, also when you're mentoring, then it's open, other things come up that you may not have planned for that you need to deal with. So some of the challenges that we have experienced, of course, we're dealing with working with these girls all through. And so some very personal issues come up, and you're not an expert in that area. And there's a dilemma because this is now your child and you have to work with them. And some of them are so personal that even by the time they're being revealed to you, it's because of the trust and the confidence that has been built. So you even fear taking it to the next person. So, we find ourselves in this position where now we have to play counselors and try to make them understand that maybe there's need for extra help, maybe for social help, and convince them that that is the way to go, and find yourself moving with them in that direction. So sometimes you're not an expert in that area, but you have to find a way of now linking in a third party or a third person to be able to help this girl up to the end. But we've been able to manage that well because, like I said, we are a network, and so then we reach out to other networks that we can work with and address some of those issues. Then, because when we're getting into the program, we are dealing with university students, we're taking selected numbers. We don't take, of course, many apply, but we have to pick a few from those that we can work with and manage within any given year. And so some get into the program with wrong notion of mentorship. And I hope that really people are watching to understand what mentorship really means. So somebody comes in and thinks, I want to jump on this boat because all my financial issues will be solved. And you see, the mentorship is not about taking care of your financial problems. So then, trying to turn this person around to really understand and change and know this is not what the program was meant for, becomes another task that maybe had not been anticipated. Sometimes some of them will get disappointed because that was their main objective of getting on. So, induction and just keeping them online and working with them to understand, like you said, I think Renee talked about inverting the mentorship. So sometimes you're also learning from them, getting to know what their thinking is, what their perspectives are, and maybe using that now to even make the situation or the whole program better in terms of the holistic approach to the mentorship. And then we also have sometimes constraint for time, because these are programs that we've taken on and students that we've taken on, and we've paired them with the different mentors from the different outlets. We are human, sometimes it's not just a good day. Sometimes, like during this COVID time, there's been a lot of anxiety, even from colleagues. You don't know with the restructuring, what is happening. Some people could easily get laid off. So, you're dealing with your own anxieties as a mentor, but there's a lot of expectation from your mentees. You're this superhuman that will have all the answers. So, trying to deal with that is like getting yourself in a corner and dealing with your situation first before you come out then to deal with the situation of the mentees that you're dealing with. But that also has actually given or created other opportunities, I think, like Betty said, of networking. I think we've developed a lot of sisterhood through the mentorship among ourselves as the mentors, because we don't all come from the same media house or from the same background. But because of working on the program together, we've actually built solidarity and sisterhood among ourselves, a network that, in fact, I look at mentorship now as enhanced Chama, you know, where now it's at a higher, maybe more professional level, but really looking out for each other and also looking at teaching each other in terms of skills sharing across board. You know, maybe one of the mentors was not very keen on broadcasting. I've been in broadcasting all my life, so we're able to rely on each other when we are carrying out our different jobs. I'm able to call, for example, NTV and tell you, Olive, please, you know, I need help on this front. There's a student who needs this and we don't have it at KBC, so are you able to give us assistance at NTV? And you're able to do that. So some of those situations have been challenging because it's a responsibility that you take up. But I think the good thing is that as you move along as a team, you tend to get strategic and find solutions to some of the issues that come up. I like it that Renee is talking on good being identified as a basic right for everybody, because that is where the world is moving. And so, you know, we try to learn from each other. We try to see who of us is better placed in terms of understanding issues of internet, issues of governance, issues of digital security, and then just piggyback on each other. So I think, like I said, there's more to celebrate in terms of moving together through mentorship, which is a two-way. But the challenges are always there. But the good thing is that we are able to work around those challenges together as a team and surmount them a lot of the times.
All right.
Can I throw in something really quickly?
Yes.
I'd like to in fact challenge or perhaps to just throw back within this conversation, which is something that Rachel has picked up on, which is, I know she was very gentle when she talked about mentorship when it comes to that which is personal. And we're working within 16 days of activism. And one of the things that we know is that women are still experiencing a disproportionate amount of sexual and gender-based violence, which you had alluded to earlier. And just bringing in the question of mentoring around that. And mentoring as the first step towards a demand for what she has referenced as public, gender-sensitive public utilities and public services, towards responding to this question of gender-based violence. Gender-based violence at home, gender-based violence that is perpetuated by religious and cultural beliefs that allow that women's bodies are fair play as long as there's a certificate that says marriage, or there is a culture that agrees that women should, there's a reason for which, or that we should not be addressing violence. And that mentorship should now be expanding to put on the table, not as a hush-hush and a silent and how do we deal with it amongst ourselves as sisters, but as an open conversation. The fact that it is no longer acceptable that women should continue to be battered or unsafe, or even men for that matter, should continue to be unsafe in their own homes, and that where they report this unsafety, that there seems to be a learned helplessness and an inability to do anything, particularly for professional women, because you look bad, because, you know, in your office people can't know that you're being hit at home, let alone for the women who already have no voices. And perhaps even to just bring it round, and I know you may have had your own question for her, but I'd love for your own comments on how do we bring that very real aspect of what we are experiencing. We know in any group of 4, just to look at the statistics today, 1 in 4 women in Kenya is being battered. So even as we sit here amongst ourselves, one of us is representative, sadly, of the fact that we're going home to get hit, to be violated, or to be psychologically abused. That is the fact. And the mentorship that we're doing, I don't know about you ladies, but I suspect as much, is trying to deal with this matter in a quiet, kinyumbani way. Whereas I think now the next level of mentorship needs to say, you know what, this is happening and it's happening to me despite me being at this level, and it's happening to my sisters, and we need to amplify, expose, and address that. And I'd love to hear what your views are on it. Sorry, Olive, I'm
and I have only 3 minutes to go, but
yes.
Quickly, I'll give you the opportunity. So I'll let that be the last question. Yes. But feedback, Renee, your statement that, let me look at it, that the assumption that women make the worst bosses is a comparative to patriarchal male form of what a boss should be. It is a narrative that is as useful as used toilet paper. Lots of reaction to that one. Some women, this is Nutri addict Naomi Nyakwara, who says some women are the worst bosses, not all of them. Though, then the two gentlemen here who have said, but I will allow you, Betty, to answer that question. And even as you answer that question, and you have 3 minutes, I'm sorry for the pressure, okay. Put you under pressure. Is there room for organizations to formalize mentorship? And what happens when people view this as a threat? That this person, Renee talking about the person who's coming behind me, is now mentoring them or training them how to do my job so that they will take over. The fear is that they will put me out of a job.
Okay. Thank you, Renee, and thank you, Olive. I think let me first start with what she has said. It's a very important conversation that needs to continue even from here. One of the things, and I tell you the truth, I have known women who are very senior in the organizations that they are in. They are CEOs. Some of them are in boards. And I know that even right now as I speak here, there is one woman who has, she has gone through hell and back, if that is a statement that I should use here. Because there is what we are saying, what the society expects of a woman. We have this fear that has been, put in us that when you're a senior woman, you don't, or a learned woman for that matter, you shouldn't voice issues of your family, because now you fear the society will come back to you and attack you and say it's because you are learned, it is because you are a senior person. And so the society has used these very conversations and narratives to say when a woman gets educated, then she can actually not be submissive to the husband. If she's successful, she cannot keep a family together, that if you are successful, this and this will happen. I remember the first time I had, and it's unfortunate that this was a religious person, and when I enrolled for my PhD, one of the statements that was said in my own house by some religious friends, when they were there when I said that, is that, are you going to take care of your family, or it's just about school? Now, you can see already what that one has meant, what that means. So if they spoke to someone else and not Betty Wababu, maybe it was such a woman who has, if a woman doesn't have the voice, doesn't know who she is, you give up and you say, I want to keep my family. And to directly answer, contribute and maybe answer that question that Renee has said, even women at the high positions, senior positions, must speak out. And these mentorships should start even from the family level. Go to different levels. We can't all mentor maybe the women in the informal setup. But each of us has a responsibility as God enables us and gives us the grace to mentor people at areas that God has given us the opportunity to mentor them. Okay. And we have women now who are suffering. They are senior people, but they can't, as she said, they cry in the office, they are stressed, they have diseases, they are sickly because they don't want the society to know what they are going through, because there's an image to keep. And these are the kind of women we are calling out, and we're telling them, speak up, raise the voice, amplify it, and if any of us knows of any lady that is suffering in this position, should help them to know it is okay to say that you're not okay. And I think that is the conversation that we need to have. Okay. That if I'm not okay, I'm not okay. Let's speak it, and let's have that conversation without fear. And it is true. There are many women that are suffering. They are senior. They put out makeup like we have done today, and they will smile, and they will try, to put everything is together. But they are suffering. They are dead inside. All right. Yes.
And I need to bring this conversation to a close at that point. I want to thank Rachel Nakitare, who's joined us all the way from Addis Ababa. She's at that internet forum there. So I had my toes crossed as well. I'm glad it's held out. So thank you very much, Rachel Nakitare of the International Association of Women in Television. of International Association of Women in Radio and Television, Kenya. I want to thank you, Betty Wababu. She talked about if those who made those comments about school, if they had not met Betty Wababu, now you've met her. She is the CEO at Tafari Consulting, as well as a communication and leadership specialist. She's provided quite a bit of mentorship, at least from where I sit this morning. Benenga Mao, who is an executive coach and an advocate. Her accolades, she mentioned a couple of boards she sits on, including Clean Start and, let me add, Amnesty International, as well as Winnie Okumu, who works with Africa Youth. Remind me, Africa Youth Trust. That's the word that was missing. Thank you very much for joining us this morning on AM Live. We continue the conversation online and at Obarrows, at NTV Kenya, hashtag AM Live NTV.
Fruity freshness in every sip.
Kwa nini kunichenga
Miaka mitatu kule Japan.
Kidogo tu.
Usomea kudunga watu.
Utamu tu.
Sindane.
Jamani, tunachenga mpira ndani ya gumzo la Sato.
Sitaki mzee aliezeka, nataka kijana.
Sasa ni kazi wewe una vita na mteleze.
Bila utakuota kidogo.
Ngoja. Hata mimi.
Tukijadili masuala yanayokuathiri wewe katika jamii.
Hii ni sura yangu na hii sura imeolewa.
Na mambo mingi kwa ndoa ambayo hayahusiani na mapenzi peke yake.
Penda kweli lakini pia tumia bongo.
Naloogopa kusema na wengine Frida twaliweka wazi.
Huyo mwanamume wa kizungu akaja na pupa mwisho akabakishwa na kachumbari na maavocado.
I might be a burden to her. Like she'll be feeding me like this.
Babu mimi namuelewa. Anajua anakoenda. Shiro hata afadhali ungeniuliza ngapa leo ndugu yangu mdogo. Ombea.
I'm in Kilifi County at the Kenyan coast to find out how a new trend in humanitarian aid that champions direct cash payments is impacting livelihoods.
The Niger Nomads community holds an annual Kure Saleh Festival, a forum to celebrate, network, trade, and discuss sustainable solutions to the challenges the community encounters in breeding their livestock.
I am in Kayanja village of central Uganda to take stock of efforts by humanitarian groups to support some of the poorest communities.
New Sensodyne Repair and Protect with Deep Repair. It's a huge game changer for me. The science is pretty amazing because it really goes deep inside the tooth and repairs tooth sensitivity. It's going to improve the quality of my life in a big way.
Do you know why they call me sugar? It's because I bring the flavor, the heat, the spice and the vibes on Kenyan radio. When a song plays on my show, it moves from being a hot song to a hit to a classic. When I interview you, you become a household name. And for every brand that advertises on this show, they move from being a brand to the brand. If you want to be seen, felt and heard, you know where to be. This is the place every Monday to Friday on 96.3 Nation FM. It's the Nation FM Drive with yours truly, Anto, Neo, Soul. So kiss, mwah! Every other frequency, goodbye, and keep it right here, 96.3 Nation FM, where good music lives.
Conversations about climate change have been ongoing for a while. This is COP27, which means the world has been here 26